It begins in silence. Nobody sees it happening at first. You are a small child looking at a parent who is slowly coming undone. Perhaps it is a struggle with addiction, or maybe it is uncontrolled anger. It could just be the deep quiet of a person too broken to be present. And without any words spoken, a very old instinct awakens in your young mind. If I am not the one to keep us all safe, nobody will. This is the moment a child starts to vanish. It is not a physical disappearance, but a psychological one. They start to smile a little more often. They learn to cry a lot less. They figure out how to sense the mood of a room before they dare to speak. They become the home's emotional guide. They become tiny adults long before their minds are developed enough for the task. And for this, the world seems to praise them for their behavior. They say you are so mature for your age. They tell you that you are so responsible. They tell you that you are just so very strong. But what no one ever takes a moment to ask is, at what personal cost? This is the hidden sorrow of those who had to grow up too quickly. Today we will go deep into the mind of that child. The effects of this experience do not simply fade away as you get older. They shape you. They follow you into your adult relationships, your career, and your basic sense of self-worth. It affects everything you do and feel as an adult. If you don't understand what truly happened, you will spend your entire life repeating old survival skills. These are the skills that once kept you safe, but now, those same skills are slowly destroying you from the inside. Let's begin with what is really happening in a child's developing mind. When children are made to support adults emotionally instead of the other way around, psychologists have a name for it. They call this process parentification. This happens when a child must become the caregiver. They are the peacemaker, the secret keeper, the therapist, or the protector for the entire family. This situation is not just unhealthy for a child, it actually rewires their developing brain. It changes how they will see the world for years to come. Because when a child is constantly in charge of managing emotions, either their own or others, it creates a state of mind called hypervigilance. This means you are always scanning your environment for any sign of danger. You feel like you must constantly walk on eggshells to maintain the peace. You quickly learn that love feels like a business deal. You provide peace and quiet, and in return, maybe they will give you a sense of safety. You learn that your own needs are dangerous things to have, but their needs are always urgent and must be met immediately without any question, so you learn to disappear. It is not a physical vanishing act, but an emotional one. You hide your true self away from the world, and in your place, a different version of you grows. This version is a high performer. You become the perfect child, or the quiet achiever. You become the therapist for all of your friends. You are the one person in your circle who never seems to ask for anything at all from others. You wear this new identity so well that even you start to forget it is just a mask. You begin to believe this is who you truly are, but deep down inside something still hurts. There is a constant ache because the inner child you buried long ago did not actually die. They are still trapped inside of you, screaming without a sound. They are asking, why didn't anyone ever step in to protect me from this? As you get older, the symptoms of this early experience become more complicated. You might develop what is called hyper-independence as a result. This means you refuse all offers of help. You push people away who get too close, or you never feel truly safe and secure in a loving relationship. You might feel strangely numb during happy moments. This happens because experiencing joy feels unfamiliar, undeserved, or maybe even a little bit dangerous to you. You might find it impossible to rest. This is because productivity is the only way you have ever learned to feel like you are worthy of love. And the worst part of all is that you might not even know you are still trapped in survival mode. You think this is just how life is. This happens because when chaos is your normal state early in life, your nervous system accepts it as the baseline. Stillness feels completely wrong. A feeling of peace feels suspicious to you. And receiving love can often feel like a debt that you will somehow have to repay later on. This is the psychological reality for a child who was forced to mature too fast. It is not simply a case of sadness or a difficult childhood. It is a complex form of trauma that reshapes how you view the entire world. And more importantly, it changes how you view yourself. Now you might be asking yourself why any child would willingly step into such a difficult role. The answer is simple. Children will do anything for attachment. They will even abandon their own true selves to feel like they belong. This is never a conscious choice that a child makes for themselves. It is a biological drive for survival. In an environment that lacks safety, a child will sacrifice their own authenticity just to feel a sense of belonging. That is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of intelligence. It is a pure survival instinct kicking in to protect them from harm. But the real tragedy of the situation is this: the very same strategy that saved you back then is the one that imprisons you in your life now. So many of us are walking around as successful, high-functioning adults, but we have deeply neglected inner children who are secretly pulling all the strings. We work too hard and overachieve just to feel like we can earn love. We stay silent about our own needs to avoid the risk of abandonment. We take care of absolutely everyone around us, but secretly, we just wish that someone, anyone, would simply ask us if we are doing okay. And that fantasy that someone will finally notice you are not as strong as you pretend, that maybe just for a moment you can fall apart and be held. That feeling is the great unmet need. It is not the need of your adult self, but of the child who was never allowed to just be a child. The very first step toward healing is not about fixing yourself. It is about witnessing what happened to you. You must see your own story clearly, because until you can validate your own experience, you will keep gaslighting yourself. You will have thoughts like, "It was not really that bad at all," or you will tell yourself, "Other people definitely had it much worse than I did." Or the most common one, "I turned out just fine in the end." But telling yourself that you are fine is just another mask you wear. And deep down in a quiet place, you know that this is the truth. So, what happens to that child when they finally grow up? They become adults who never feel truly safe, even when they are in calm, quiet rooms. They become lovers who cannot bring themselves to trust softness and vulnerability. They become givers who have no idea how to receive anything from others. They become the kind of people who apologize for crying. They are people who flinch when they are given a compliment, and they confuse being exhausted with success. This is the true cost of growing up too fast. Because if your childhood trained you to be strong at the expense of ever being soft, if it trained you to be quiet instead of being honest, if it trained you to fix others while ignoring your own deep fractures, then what? What kind of adulthood do you end up inheriting? You inherit a life where you are always holding your breath, just waiting for the other shoe to drop. You are waiting for someone to finally give you permission. Permission to at last fall apart and let go of the weight you have been carrying. But here is the hard truth. No one is coming to rescue the child that you had to bury so long ago. You are the only one who can do it. You are the one who must go back in time and hold their hand. You are the one who has to say the words that no one else ever did. You must tell that child, "You did not deserve what happened to you." You must tell them you were just a child and it was not your fault. And finally, you must tell them you are allowed to rest now. This is the real beginning of what some people call shadow work. It is not about fixing yourself. It is not about performing for others. It is not about bypassing your pain with some kind of fake toxic positivity. It is about turning toward the abandoned parts of yourself. It is about finally saying to them, "I can see you now. I can hear you now." And most importantly, you must promise them, "And this time, I am not leaving you." That is the process of repairing what was broken inside. And it can feel brutal, because it asks you to finally feel all the grief that you never had the time or the space to feel as a child. It asks you to sit with the rage you suppressed. It asks you to feel the deep sorrow and all of the unmet needs you had to ignore. It asks you to weep for the birthdays where no one seemed to care, to mourn the innocence you lost while protecting people who should have been protecting you. But feeling that deep grief is not a sign of weakness. It is proof that you are finally starting to heal in a very real and profound way. Because what was once frozen solid inside of you is finally starting to thaw. Now let's talk about how this pattern shows up in adulthood. It often appears in ways that are subtle, tragic, and frequently invisible to others. You might become the therapist in all of your friendships. You listen to everyone's problems, but never let anyone get close enough to truly see you. You keep a safe distance from genuine intimacy. You might be praised by others for your incredible independence, But deep down you are just terrified of ever becoming a burden to another person. You might find yourself in relationships where you constantly overfunction. You are always fixing, managing, and over-explaining everything for your partner. And then you wonder why you feel so deeply resentful all the time. You feel drained because you are doing all of the emotional work. You might also struggle with setting healthy boundaries with other people. This happens because saying the word no still feels like a deep betrayal. These things are not your personality traits. They are your coping strategies. They were learned and conditioned into you, but there is some good news. They are also unlearnable. But this can only happen when you stop idolizing your own strength and start to finally honor your own wounds. One of the most powerful things you can do is to ask your inner child a question. You can ask, "What did I need back then that I never got?" When you listen closely, you may hear some answers. Answers like, "I needed someone to tell me that none of it was ever my fault." Or you might hear, "I needed someone to just ask me how I was doing." Or, "I needed to be able to play, rest, and laugh without any fear." And then slowly, very slowly, you can begin to give those things to yourself. You start to meet those old needs in your present adult life. You are not doing this to fix your past. That is impossible. You are doing it to finally stop reliving your past over and over again. This is how you stop looking for parents in your romantic partners. This is how you stop mistaking the feeling of anxiety for your own intuition. This is how you stop running from the child you once were. And it is how you stop running from the new self you are slowly becoming. The psychologist Carl Jung once said something powerful about this. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. He understood this journey very well. He also said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. But this inner work demands that we face it. We have to face all of it. The neglected parts, the ashamed parts, the scared parts, and especially the angry parts of ourselves need our attention. Because true healing is not about becoming some brand new person. It is about remembering who you were before the world told you who you had to be. So, if you are someone who had to grow up far too fast, please know this. Your maturity was never the problem that you needed to solve. The problem was that you were never given any other choice. But now, as an adult, you finally do have a choice in front of you. You can now choose softness over hardness. You can choose to finally rest. You can choose to stop managing everyone else's emotions all the time. And you can choose to start honoring your own emotions for a change. And no, this will not happen overnight. Healing is a long process. There will be days when you feel just like a small child again, and that is good. That is actually the whole point of this journey. Let that child finally come home to you. Let them cry, let them play, let them finally be seen and heard by the one person who matters most. Because you are not broken. You are simply becoming whole again. You are putting the forgotten pieces of yourself back together one by one. And maybe, just maybe, for the very first time in your entire life, you are finally growing up in the right way. This is your chance. You are not growing through pressure anymore. You are not growing through fear anymore. You are growing through truth and self-compassion. You may feel you never really had a childhood, but you still have a future ahead of you. And this time, you are the one who gets to write it.